I'll give you an example from the pandemic. The businesses that we purchased here have historically been family-held businesses. So not a lot of, frankly, there's not a lot of sophistication. And they were used to, they evaluated employees. Well, if Jill is in the seat and she's here at 7:59 and leaves at 5:01, Jill is a good employee. And, that's what I value. And when we went, as the pandemic hit, and we started to go from a, not in work kind of activity to a remote work activity, that the leaders, they didn't know what to do because I don't see Jill anymore. And talking to those folks and training them about, you have to interact multiple times with Jill when Jill's at home, and you don't have the benefit of incidental contact anymore to talk to Jill and assign things. You have to become way more intentional about, managing deliverables as opposed to managing effort. And you have to understand that you actually have to reach out, because I know you know everything that Jill's family does, but you do that because you got coffee together. Now, when you call her 3 times a day, and 2 times about work and 1 to see how the grandkids are. So it's, you have to, we evolve, somebody mentioned that earlier, and that's a change process too. But for our leaders, we have to spend a tremendous amount of time that you have to change the way you work, and you have to change the way what you value. And that's all about conversation and setting the new context. The context in this example was Jill's good because Jill's here, and to Jill's good because Jill gets stuff done and when we need to get stuff done. But that's all about explaining all the stuff that you used to do that made sense for in a new environment. This is why this makes sense, and here are the tools to get that done. And then I've talked before about disciplined communication and sticking with the process. That's what you do. So I think it's having good intentional conversations.
I would just build on that because I think historically we have been an hours type of culture. So if you see someone, if they're there, I remember starting work, and the advice from one of the individual contributors who highly influenced the organization said, you beat your boss in here and you don't leave until your boss leaves. And if your boss goes to lunch, then you may, and that was the culture. It was a long time ago, but not that long ago. And now with our work at home hybrid environments, we're looking more at outcomes. And for some, it is very uncomfortable to have metrics and have to deliver in that way. And there are others who might have different types of talents that work better in the organization, work better when you're partnering with people. And I think for some organizations, those people who they thought were superstars based on in the office have now become question marks right now, as we're in the midst of figuring out the next steps of how to move forward. For those organizations that got right back on site because you needed to, it may be harder, but I think for a lot of organizations, they had to say, okay, I don't see this individual delivering. And it is the responsibility of the organization to help get new clarity, to talk about what success looks like, what goals look like. And if there's somebody you want to retain, figure out how to transition so that they understand what success looks like without an office environment.
And I'd also say the vice versa has happened as well. Those people who you maybe had question marks about now get moved to a different environment, work from home, and now it's, wow, I didn't realize this person was capable of so much. And I'll give an example of we had an individual here who was more social, let's call them, before the pandemic, and then it's, well, you got to work from home. And I remember having a conversation with the manager, and he said, wow, this person is amazing. And even though we're going back to the office, I think I want her more working from home. So that's been interesting as well. I've said this while we're going through this whole pandemic thing of, there are people who struggle in the office, right? Or succeed in the office. And the flip side happens as well. We have people who succeed at home more. And so that's just been very interesting of just changing the environment. how much of the outcomes have changed. It's just it's a very interesting social experiment that we've been forced into, I think.
And it's interesting because what I've heard from people that who have called me or like soul searching, deciding whether they want to stay with their company or leave. Sometimes they're like, I just don't feel that the organization is as kind. I get, someone shoots me an email, the niceness somehow has been lost in this work from home environment, or my boss has disappeared. I don't know how I'm doing, those types of things. And as you take control of your culture, that's one thing that you can immediately do, is to say, one of the things we value as an organization is how we treat people. And we have to be extra careful on how we communicate, because it can be misinterpreted. So what are you doing intentionally about that?
We say a lot that, especially with our people leaderships and remote work, that, frequency is the new currency. And it's just a simple phrase, but it's easy for people to remember. And, it's the driver of the successful leadership of people being remote. And, it's what Cord and Don and Chris, they're all saying that, and you really have to drive that. And, that frequency has to be more of a personal touch. The other thing I hear, Christy, is everybody wants, my company doesn't value employees as much as they did before, because we're not having the luncheons and we're not having the holiday parties, and we can't do it the same way we used to, but that doesn't mean that our value statement has shifted. So, and that does bring challenge back to, to the organization to say, what are ways in which we can still be sure people know that they're valued, without doing a big holiday Christmas party over at, some large place. And so, but, especially those that are remote, they're not getting that feeling of inclusion as much. It's very important. And, again, going back to that frequency is the new currency. If you're going to be a good people leader of remote employees, you have to take that time. And, so many times managers say, well, I don't have time to spend time with my people. And you're like, well, that you do. And it is as important to schedule. And the conversations I've had with people around that, it's like, schedule it. If you're having a challenge doing that, I hear you. I understand. We all have workloads that we're trying to, shove 25 pounds into a 5-pound bag, right? That's what we all do. Got that. But you're going to have to schedule it. And, if you're in a manufacturing environment, I used to do this at Demmer. I scheduled walk that I just scheduled so I would be out on the floor, because it's so easy to get busy doing your work and forgetting about the importance of that piece, especially when we're in that frequency is the new currency place. So schedule it. And it might sound silly, but it's not. And the impact to your culture and to your employee retention and creating that feeling that we need for retention is huge. And it's okay to schedule it. People are like, oh my gosh, that just seems so rude. And I'm like, no, it's not rude. Because if you don't schedule it, you're not going to do it. So it's okay. It's important. You schedule every other important meeting. So it's okay to schedule that time for importance, because it does pay off to the culture.
I love that phrase, frequency is the new currency, considering what the rate of inflation is these days. But I think I kind of jokingly say that, but there really is no negative inflation rate when it comes to your communications with people. Yeah, you may have to find that balance between somebody who might not be comfortable in having all those conversations, or numerous conversations in a short period of time, but there really is no negative to making sure that you are having those conversations and you're spending that currency to build those relationships with folks, particularly when the fallout from that has an impact on the organization's culture.